Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, welcome to the FigureItOutcast. I'm Adam Koralik here for the May 2019 episode. Thank you very much for joining me. This is, of course, a Patreon podcast where Patreon backers get access to it early. Also, of course, it does go up publicly near the end of the month, but if you are a Patreon backer, you get it right away. You also get early access to my video content, and of course, you support the channel, which I very much appreciate. But anyway, information on that's all in the description. So, we're going to be talking about a whole range of different subjects here. Those subjects are also listed in the description, so feel free to click around on different time code if you'd like to hear different specific subjects. So, the first thing up here, we're going to be talking some Star Wars stuff. The first Star Wars subject is R.I.P. Peter Mayhew. Peter Mayhew played Chewbacca back in 1977, played him through the original trilogy. I believe he actually also played Chewbacca in Revenge of the Sith. I could be wrong about that, but I think he did in the brief time he was there. I also know he was in Force Awakens, and at least in the scenes where Chewbacca is like sitting on the Falcon. It was mostly ceremonial. I don't know if he ended up playing him in any scenes for Last Jedi, although I imagine he probably did. And the upcoming Rise of Skywalker, maybe he did in that as well. That one I really don't know. But you know, if he did, I hope he did, because it'd be kind of nice that he got to at least complete that in a way. It's very sad. There's on a more personal level, I just went to Star Wars Celebration with my girlfriend, and he was actually here in Chicago, and we, on the last day of the convention, you know, we were thinking about different autographs and stuff to get, because we really don't do that very much, but we decided to do that with Ian McDiarmid. And we just suddenly I got this like vibe. I was like, you know, we should probably get Peter Mayhew. And you know, she was on board, and we looked into the option of doing that, but he was like sold out for the day, and we're like, well, oh well. And then fast forward only a few weeks later, and he's passed away. So we were like, wow. So we felt kind of bad, like we missed an opportunity there. But yeah, so rest in peace, Peter Mayhew. Unfortunately, never got to meet you. Got very close. I believe we actually did see him from a distance, but yeah, that would have been nice, but your work will be missed. But you know, the guy they got now, that I forget his name. It's a really long like Nordic name, but he's doing a good job, and I'm sure I know he had the Peter Mayhew's blessing and everything. So yeah, I hope he keeps it up, and that'll be good. So Chewbacca lives on. Thank you very much, Peter Mayhew. But moving on to more Star Wars content. Like I said, we were at Star Wars Celebration, and they debuted the trailer for Rise of Skywalker, aka Star Wars Episode 9. So there's a whole lot we could talk about with Star Wars behind the scenes type of stuff that I find fascinating, like the idea that, you know, Star Wars 9, in case you're not following this stuff, or Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, will be the last Star Wars movie within what they consider the saga. The saga is defined as the Skywalker movies, meaning the main movies. So the ones that, while they're canon but they don't count, is the Clone Wars movie, the animated one, which really almost everybody forgets about, the Solo film, and Rogue One. The other 9 are the main storyline films. And this is supposed to be the conclusion of that. As in, there will not be an episode 10, 11, 12. And if there are, they will have nothing to do with any sort of Skywalkers or anything like that. I think that at least that's what they're claiming for now. But at the same time, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if in the future you see a Star Wars Episode 10 that's just kind of forgets the marketing material that they bothered with for Episode 9. I can't remember any specific examples. Actually, I take that back. When Revenge of the Sith came out, I vaguely recall that there was a thing about how that was the last. And it's like, times change. So and people forget those marketing campaigns, and it doesn't necessarily matter all that much. But theoretically, anyway, this is the last Star Wars movie for a while. Also because the Lucasfilm camp of Disney basically figured out that they haven't figured it out. So you can't. It's not that people are saying, oh, there's Star Wars fatigue, you can't release a movie every year, blah blah blah. I don't think that's true. I think they went into it thinking like, this is Star Wars. It's one of the most established brands ever. We now have this. We can just put out a movie every year like Marvel does, and we'll just make tons and tons of money. That could have worked, but there wasn't enough focus on what the movies actually were. I'm not going to break down every single one of these, but in short, Force Awakens was what it needed to be. It doesn't hold up as well over time, but it was what it needed to be at the time it came out. Rogue One, and I know I get in trouble for this, is my favorite of the Disney era ones, but at the same time I acknowledge that there's huge flaws in that film, but it wasn't a very special movie. Last Jedi is the one that broke the franchise's back by doing unbelievable brand damage, and then Solo just fell into the wake of that. Solo was not a particularly good movie. It was very average at best, and that didn't help its case. So what they've learned is take a little break and get it right. We now know that while there was some loose plan for Force Awakens and the new trilogy, there was nothing really concrete that was agreed upon by all parties. Hence, The Last Jedi was able to throw it all out and do whatever it wanted. So I think what they've learned in addition to that is you can't just pump out a movie. That's not all Marvel was doing. Marvel had a big tapestry, a big plan of what they wanted to have happen. Sure, there were bugs along the way, but they held to it and they held it together. The Lucasfilm camp didn't do that. They just kind of went forward and said, it's the next one, so it'll be good. You can't treat it like that. You have to have some sort of overarching plan. And we could speculate for days what that plan should have been, but that's too late now. You can't do that. Personally, I would have had the new Star Wars trilogy, basing it off of what JJ gave us. I would have, kind of had more of a mystery villain in the form of Snoke. I would have ultimately had that be Plagueis, Darth Plagueis, and build up towards that direction. And like kind of have the big baddie villain type of plotline, kind of like the way I guess we're going to reference them again. The Marvel movies kind of used Thanos as the big thing you're building up towards. I kind of would have wanted to see more of that type of thing with Star Wars. I mean, not copy them straight up, but like there's no reason you couldn't have Darth Plagueis be this grandiose villain that comes in at the end. And he is Snoke, or you just follow that type of plot line and have different characters have to find their way to that. And instead, you had The Last Jedi, which let's just not. I did an entire live stream when that movie came out and all my problems with it. Let's just not. The point of this subject is supposed to be Star Wars Episode 9 and what we actually are thinking of it. So I went into this trailer the first time not really knowing what to expect, because when you come out of Last Jedi, you have no idea where they're supposed to go with this franchise, and do you even care? So this was a salvage operation. And if there was anybody who could salvage it, I mean, that's JJ's entire career is based around, hey, let me take a totally dead franchise and fix it. So he has to do it twice with Star Wars, which is kind of impressive. So hopefully he pulled it off. But I gotta say, the trailer itself, I'm not like, holy shit, I can't wait. But I am excited. It's kind of got me back in there, and I'm kind of like, all right, I'll definitely check that out when it comes out. I'm looking forward to it. I do like that how various parts of it definitely feel like a retcon already. In one aspect, you could argue is the title itself feels like a retcon, ignoring certain things that happened in The Last Jedi, or at least reversing them. Repairing Kylo's mask, whatever, whoever was doing that specifically, just little moments here and there that are trying to bring it back. And I think that's pretty neat. So I am looking forward to it, but I don't think the true like nerd in me is really going to be like super, I can't wait until it gets a lot closer, because right now it's just too far to even care. But we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, you guys tell me, because I know Star Wars, I think it was George himself once said that Star Wars fans are Star Wars fans because they hate Star Wars. So I'm always curious, because Star Wars fans are the only ones who passionately like to complain about Star Wars. So tell me in the comments what you guys think. Are you excited about Star Wars Episode 9? And what else would you have to say about it? So let's move on from that to this other small Star Wars subject. I kind of touched on this on an episode of Playload, but I actually sat down and played Star Wars Battlefront 2, the EA one. There was a big sale on it. It was very cheap, so I decided to pick it up for like $10 or so. And it was a game I had never had any interest in, because the original Battlefront 1 and 2 on the OG Xbox, like, I love that game series. I do not like anything that EA has done with that franchise. But I was hanging with a buddy of mine, Kyle, and he had me try out Battlefront 2's single-player mode. And it wasn't great, but it's the canon story of what happened right after Return of the Jedi. But I wasn't able to finish it in the time I was there, just due to time constraints. But I ended up picking it up for cheap, like I said, and I played through it, which only took a couple of hours. The gameplay, to be honest, I really didn't enjoy very much. I thought the space battles part was really annoyingly difficult to control. The actual shooting mechanic, I wasn't that great either. It felt a little, I want to say rubbery, but I'm not sure that's the best description of it. It's like if you didn't hit headshots and you weren't really accomplishing anything. It was okay. And I really just played it for the story. And with that said, it only took a couple of hours. And yay, all right, I got some story bits out of it. I recognize that, and I said this in Playload as well, is it's not really fair to judge the game just based on its single player campaign, because it's not designed for that. It's meant to be a multiplayer thing, but that's not my wheelhouse. I don't play much multiplayer content. It's not where I really get my enjoyment. So for about $10, I think I did okay. Having completed it now, knowing I probably will never play it again, maybe $5 would have been a better point. But whatever, I'm satisfied with it. I could always play it again if I really want to. But I'm curious what else people thought about Battlefront 2. But I do remember once I finished it, I never ended up tweeting about this, but I actually really thought about writing a tweet just saying, like, just completed Battlefront 2, and makes me really wish that anyone other than EA had the license. It makes me sad because I know the developers are competent. It's like EA corporate that makes them do stupid things. But whatever. I'm hopeful. I don't know why I'm hopeful, but I'm hopeful that the next, it's Fallen Order, I think it is, Jedi Fallen Order, is a much better game. I have to believe that after everything that happened with Battlefront 2, everything that happened with Solo and Last Jedi, and all the bad will that came out of the Star Wars brand, that Disney has forced some changes. I mean, they probably did in the form of making episode 9 more grounded and more focused, and then telling everybody, hey, we need to spend the next few years coming up with like real plans for Star Wars and not just, hey, let's do another one. And we, as far as the games are probably concerned, it sounds like from what I'm hearing that LucasArts might be being reopened under Disney, and taking the license away from EA, which would be fantastic. So we'll see what happens with that. But in the short term, it's very possible that Disney ordered some serious quality control over that particular game. So we'll see. We will see. But yeah, that's it for that. Next subject. Now we're going to go into some movie stuff before we get into some video game stuff here. This is just something I saw. I saw this trailer in front of, I think it was Avengers Endgame, the Godzilla King of the Monsters trailer. Now, I'm a huge Godzilla fan, like big time. Like I have every single one of those movies on at least DVD, if not Blu-ray, and I'm including the Dr. Pepper Godzilla 1985 film. Only the super Godzilla fans are going to know what that means. That one was a huge pain in the ass. There's a whole story to that, but we're not going to go into that. Point is, I love Godzilla. And I knew this movie was coming, but I've been intentionally kind of not paying much attention to it. Because even though I liked Godzilla, I think it was Godzilla 2014, it wasn't that great of a film. I think I saw it in theaters, and I think I saw it on Blu-ray once, and I haven't watched it again. Because Shin Godzilla, the Japanese movie that came out like 2 years later that was not related at all, I thought was an infinitely better film. So I wasn't super excited about the idea of a sequel to that Godzilla, but at the same time, I was like, I'm open to it, you know. And I also believe that they're doing the Godzilla versus King Kong movie. They're going to try and tie the Skull Island King Kong with this Godzilla and just see how that goes. And that could be a thing. That could be kind of cool. But anyway, this is Godzilla King of the Monsters. And so I'm watching this trailer, and it was a really weird trailer because it was abnormally long, I felt like. But it started off amazing. It just totally got me sucked in. They're like, we have to accept we live in a time where Titans are coming back, you know, stuff like that. And this trailer had me pumped, like the way a good trailer is really supposed to. But it got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm sold. Stop this trailer now. And then it kept going. And the longer it kept going, the more and more I started to check out. I was like, I'm starting to get this is dumb vibes. And that's not good because I was already totally sold on this movie. So I don't know if the actual film will be like that at all. I mean, trailer house cuts are obviously very different things. But yeah, I guess the position is I'm definitely going to see it, but now I really don't know what to think of it because that was kind of a unique trailer experience for me. A trailer that totally, I was like halfway through, I'm like, oh shit, yes, I can't wait. Until in the same trailer, I'm like, maybe not. Like, I don't know. I don't usually get that kind of reaction out of a trailer. but I did in that case. So yeah, I think it comes out at the end of this month, actually. So by the time this goes public, I might have already seen it. So we'll give more feedback perhaps next month. But yeah, for now, Godzilla King of the Monsters is around the corner. So switching over to video game stuff and stuff very specifically about this channel. So at this point in time, if you're a Patreon backer, you probably wouldn't have seen these yet. But at the public, you would have. I've started doing some gameplay videos. At this point in time, well, I guess I shouldn't say the specifics of which ones I've had, but I'm very curious of what you guys have been thinking of those, because I know that's a very different direction for my channel, and it's certainly not like that's all we're doing now or anything like that. It's like that's going to be weaved into the programming lineup, if you will. And I just would like some feedback. Like, do you like that direction? Does it make no sense? You know, like, what are you thinking? Because ideally, the plan is I would like to be able to just kind of pick up and play and record kind of just something. It doesn't really matter necessarily what it is, and just kind of see what I think of it, whether it's good, it's bad, it's whatever. Just kind of try it out, you know, make some jokes out of it and just have a good time. And if that's successful, maybe we evolve into doing it live. Maybe, you know, who knows from there. Who knows, maybe even we'll get to the point where multiplayer is a thing that we do with the community. I don't know, but I'm just curious what you guys think, because, well, I guess I can kind of talk about it. I did like a Flintstones Viva Rock Vegas one for the Dreamcast because I wanted to do this like obscure weird thing that never really came out. Then I did the Division 2 because I just had this like kind of this bug to play it, because I hadn't played it since the events that I went to for it. And I don't know. I'm just curious what you guys think of the whole thing, and tell me about it. And if you have other suggestions, I'm always ears. Obviously, I can't promise that I'll do the games you suggest because there's a billion games out there. But I'm just curious what people have been thinking. That's basically all I'm going to you guys with, is a question. What have you been thinking of those? And should I continue? So next up, the Xbox One S all-digital version. So this thing had been rumored for a long time. And if you're not familiar, and I'm sure a lot of you are at this point, because I never did a video on it. I don't really do entire videos on subjects like this. It's just more like I throw them in here so that you guys can get my thoughts for those who are interested. But the Xbox One S all-digital version is the Xbox One S, the white console, with no disc drive. And the idea is that it's all your games function digitally. Now, what I've noticed from it, now, first of all, I would never do this because I don't support all digital gameplay content. It's not for me. So I'm immediately not interested in this device. Plus, I already have Xbox Ones. Like, there's really nothing to this. The only advantage this thing theoretically would have is that it's cheaper, or could be cheaper, because it wouldn't require a disc drive. But from what I've been seeing online, it's actually not cheaper. So I don't really know what the point of it is. Like, I just want to double check on that, but I'm going to pull up, right, you can hear my loud ass keyboard. I'm going to pull up the Xbox One, and we're going to look at some price points here. But I'm pretty sure that, yeah, the Xbox One all digital, which comes out, actually at the time I record this, it comes out in 3 days. Okay, so the Xbox One S all digital is $250. Okay, now the S bundle that comes with a bunch of games is $300, so it is cheaper. However, I know personally I got my Xbox One S for way less money. I mean, like, I think I got mine for like $150, because I know that they drop those prices all the time. Now, to be fair, they will do that as well with the Xbox One S all digital, but so essentially what you're saying is you get $50 off if you don't take a disc drive, which to me is a terrible deal because you no longer have access to the entire disc library, which is terrible because if you're in like that I'm going to save money on games type of mode, you know, you're probably going to end up buying a lot of used games, and so you can't use them with the all digital version. You have to buy them at their locked prices in the digital store. I'm not going to get into the whole physical versus digital argument because you guys know where I stand on that, but I just don't see how that thing is useful to anybody. That's, to me, is extremely short-sighted. It's kind of like I don't know if anybody remembers this, but towards the end of the PlayStation 3 lifespan, Sony came out with a very budget version of the PS3 that had a 12 gigabyte hard drive in it. And it was really cheap because it only had that hard drive. The problem is that hard drive is impractical. You couldn't realistically use it with the console for very long. It kind of reminds me of that. Like, they're selling you on the idea like, hey man, it's cheaper. It's just a little cheaper. So if you don't have the full 300, you can get this one instead, not accounting for the fact that you're going to have to pay in other ways. In that case, you're going to have to pay more expense. You're going to have to pay for hard drive space because you need an attachment, because you can't, I mean, it'd be much more difficult to uninstall the games and reinstall depending on your bandwidth, of course. And you do not have the financial ability to get used games. So you're locked at whatever their price points are, or even new games using programs like Gamers Club Unlocked or whatever. So yeah, personally, I would never get this, but again, I don't represent everybody. But yeah, I mean, my 2 cents on the matter was probably very predictable to a lot of you, but yeah, very notably, that's where I stand. So let's move on from there. We're going to talk about E3 briefly. So at the time I record this, E3 is only a month away, which is ridiculous. I still don't 100% know if I'm going this year, although it's extremely likely. I've been invited to several of the show floors. I do have a badge actually all set up for me. It's just a matter of like committing the actual time and resources and all that stuff to see if I'm actually going to go. But if I had to guess, I'd say, yeah, I'm probably going. But I'm going to be very curious to see how it works this year, because no Sony, no Nintendo, Microsoft's the only of the console manufacturers actually going to be there. I know Nintendo's going to do their own like treehouse type of thing that they always do, but it's not like a traditional show, but that's been the case with them for years. So really you'll just have a lot of the third parties, and I don't know, man, I'm a little worried about E3. This might be, I'm not going to say the last year of E3, but it could be. It could be the last like significant year, because the other thing is their contract at that space, the Expo Center in Los Angeles, I believe expires this year. So after that, they have to find a new place to go unless they can renew that contract. And they might determine that there's just not enough of a point, because a lot of people like to have their own conferences. They like to do them in-house. I've talked to a lot of friends who are, work at development studios and stuff, and a lot of them say that they don't even like doing their own big shows. They like to, incorporate theirs into other people's shows for budgetary reasons. So, if you're going to just present your game, often it's best to do it in like your own controlled environment, rather than kind of tacking it on to other people's, meaning your own specific release, kind of like what Sony's planning to do. Like, rather than share the space with E3, like they can dominate the media cycle by having it be separated from that. So it'll be interesting to see how this one actually plays out. And it could be potentially the last of the major E3s. But who knows? Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe next year it'll be huge and totally relevant again. But if you've never been to an E3 and you wanted to, it's short notice, but maybe you should try to go to this one if you can. It's only been public for the last couple of years, so you need a media badge prior to that. But yeah, it's just kind of to go for the convention atmosphere at this point. But I can tell you, as someone who's actually been there a couple of times, E3 without a media badge or, early access type of thing is not that exciting. It's just kind of, you walk around and you just look up at booths and you wait in line to play a game for a little bit. So that's why it's always better to know people so you can skip all that. Because realistically, given the length of lines, you'll be lucky to play 1 or 2 games a day. Maybe, well, okay, that's exaggerated. Maybe like 3 or 4, depending on what you're playing. If you're the indie booth section, then you probably play whatever you want. But yeah, but if you just want to go just to have that like on your, off your bucket list or whatever, this might be the year to do it. So we will move on from that. Now, speaking of E3, one of the companies that invited me to their thing was Bethesda. And so Bethesda is also doing something very strange that I got a lot of tweets about. That really, really threw me off. But I found it absolutely fascinating. So their game Rage 2, which I got to play at E3 last year, actually, they're doing a promo thing for it where they're giving away a Sega Dreamcast themed to Rage 2. And they're like, it's a special Dreamcast that plays a build of Rage 2. And so that naturally, being in the Dreamcast community, got a lot of us kind of like, whoa, what? There's a Rage 2 being developed for Dreamcast. What are you talking about? But upon closer inspection, you realize very quickly what happened is I noticed immediately the first 2 controller ports on that Dreamcast are not standard Dreamcast controller ports. The 3rd and 4th are, but not the first 2. So basically, to shorten it, what they've done is they've made a custom little PC that goes inside of a Dreamcast shell. So it's not really a Dreamcast. It just looks like one. And it's just a PC that they happen to have a build of Rage 2 on. So you can enter to win it. Although at the time that this video's out, I think they probably would have already chosen a winner. But I just thought it was like a fascinating little promotion. I don't think Sega had anything to do with it. And I don't know why they chose the Dreamcast specifically, other than someone just had like a weird idea over at Bethesda. I have no clue, because I doubt there's a Dreamcast in the game anywhere, but that would be weird. But yeah, so it was kind of cool to see the Dreamcast be on like, major, video game news outlets for a little bit, because usually that's not how it goes. Because you put out a new indie Dreamcast game, you'll get some media buzz, but not to the level that thing got. So that was pretty cool. But moving on, so thank you, I guess, Bethesda, for doing that. That was cool. But moving on to the next subject, which is also semi-Sega related. Let's just get it out of the way now. The Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Yeah, so that's a thing. So when I first heard about that, I was just like, did the world need a Sonic movie? Like, did it? Like, no part of me ever thought we needed that. I think the last time I ever thought a Sonic movie would be good, I was in like middle school. Like, it's been a long time since I thought Sonic the Hedgehog, a movie, would be a good idea. And technically there already is one, actually. There's an anime Sonic movie, which I didn't like either. I did watch it, though. So every little bit of news that's come out about this project has fascinated me, because it always sets the internet on fire. So before we go into that, though, I was doing a little research before this, and it turns out how the Sonic movie got made is kind of fascinating. Because for those of you, because obviously I follow a lot of movie stuff, as you can tell, since my podcast is largely dominated by film discussion. One thing that fascinated me about the Sonic movie is the production side of it, which was, so there, people might vaguely remember, there was a time where Seth Rogen was going to do a movie called Console Wars, which is going to be about a guy who's all pro Super Nintendo and another guy who's all pro Sega Genesis, and it was supposed to be a comedy between the two. I guess through that, there was some sort of deal and relationship built by Sony with Sega for the purposes of film. And through that, eventually Sega signed over the film rights to Sonic the Hedgehog to Sony. With very little, they have a couple of abilities. They can change some stuff, but mostly Sega stays out of it. Kind of the way Disney, who owns Spider-Man, has to stay out of Sony's version of Spider-Man because Sony owns the film option for him. But that's a different discussion. But really, at the end of the day, Sony had control of what they were going to do with the film. Now, as production went on with the Sonic the Hedgehog film, Sony decided this really wasn't for them, and they threw it over to Paramount. Now, Paramount is the only film company of the big, now I think it's Big Five, that was actually in worse shape financially than Sony was. They were just not doing well, and so they needed something. So they were kind of looking at Sonic like, hey, this is a big, family-friendly project, and he's a big character, well-known video game, blah, blah, blah. Let's turn it into something. So that leads us to where we are. And now I watched this trailer, and just like everybody else who's watched this trailer, you just scratch your head and go, why did you do this? Now, of course, Sega gets all the blame, but like I said, it's not actually their fault. They really have basically nothing to do with this. And I know they made a bunch of suggestions that weren't really adhered to or given a shit about, basically. So, yeah, I will say this, though. The power of the internet. Everyone hated on this trailer so much that Paramount and the director of the film actually came out and said, okay, we hear you. We're going to change the way Sonic looks. Because he looks like nightmare fuel in that, it's not the final version. And when fans were making, edits of the trailer with their own CGI recreations that looked better, you were one-upping Paramount, which did not make them look good. So power to the internet, man. The fact that you guys were able to do that. I mean, I didn't, we all complained about it, but damn, like to actually make them make that big of a change. Now, will it actually make the movie any good? No, it's damage control. Like they'll make the movie less terrible. That's really all you can do at that point. Because if you've seen that trailer, you've already seen that movie. It's a very buddy cop type of movie. Like he's going to be fish out of water. And at first James Marsden doesn't like him. And then he does. And then they realize they can get along because they have a common enemy. Oh no, one of you got hurt. We have the awkward, we have to get away from each other scene. We're brought back together for a common purpose. We think we lost one of you. Oh, it turned out, and we're okay. And we beat the bad guy. And credits. Like I'm sorry. I just described the entire movie to you. And you know it. It's not going to be a good movie. A Sonic movie, like I said, might have had its place in this world in the 90s. And I don't mean that just because of Sonic's popularity being at more of a height in the 90s, but because the 90s you could also get away with a lot of weird stuff with animation and crossing over into the real world, like your Space Jams and all that type of stuff. You could do a lot of strange concepts that today would be ridiculous and would never really play out to an audience. Sonic the Hedgehog feels like he is a throwback to the 90s, but not the way we remember the 90s. Probably the way the 90s would actually feel to someone you awkwardly dropped into it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that movie feels just wrong. And there's something metaphorical about that when it comes to Sonic himself as well. But, yeah, I can't. And also Jim Carrey's back in that. Like, that's even another 90s throwback there. So, and I love Jim Carrey. He's great. But yeah, so I feel like that movie will just be a complete disaster, and I don't think I have any intention of seeing it theatrically. I might see it on DVD or Blu-ray, and that's only if I hear like really good things, which would really shock me if I did, because I can't imagine that will be a film that will not be terrible. Like I can't see it being the case. So. Yeah, that's my thoughts on the Sonic the Hedgehog movie without ever having seen it. Now, who knows? Maybe this thing will be genius, but we know it won't. Anyway, enough of that. Let's move on. We're going to do a round of shout outs here. Now, everybody on this list, thank you very much. These are all Patreon backers. They have all donated at the level in which they get a shout out. If you would like to join this level, get a shout out, or be on this podcast, or just get early access to videos or anything, there's a whole bunch of options over on the Patreon page, which once again is in the description. Much appreciated. You can go over there and check it out. So again, thank you to all these people. We got Corey Marsh, Jesse Perez, Caleb Bravo, Joseph Tamburino, Luis Bonilla, Michael Kelly, Eric Peralez, Trey Wagner, and Tim Inman. So thank you guys very much. Once again, that's Corey Marsh, Jesse Perez, Caleb Bravo, Joseph Tamburino, Luis Bonilla, Michael Kelly, Eric Peralez, Trey Wagner, and Tim Inman. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much. So right here was where I had every intention of talking about Avengers Endgame and then ultimately Spider-Man Far From Home. But I actually went on and I recorded it, and it was like 50 plus minutes. So I decided to isolate it and make it its own separate video, which is already available to everybody at this point. So yeah, I'm sorry that this particular podcast is getting a little shortchanged in that regard, but the content still exists and it's still very much available to you. So please feel free to go click on that and check that out. There was so much of it, it just bogged this down. So it was better to separate it. So that's it for now. I know I just did shout outs, but a quick round of shout outs again for the Patreon backers: Corey, Jesse, Caleb, Joseph, Luis, Michael, Eric, Trey, Tim. Thank you very much. Thank you as always to all of you for listening. Please consider supporting me on Patreon at any time. Link in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all later.